Hey guys, my name is Ryan.
And my name is Miska.
And welcome to Overwatch Central, and welcome to What's the Meta. This is a series where we go over recent changes to some hero balancing and how it affects other heroes in the game and overall the health of Overwatch. Today we've had a good amount of time to get used to the D.Va, Ana and Roadhog changes, so this is a video reflecting on what the pros are doing, but also what we've experienced in our own ranked games. To find out more information on sort of meta pick rates, especially in the competitive scene, then Winston's Lab and Planet Overwatch are great places to look at, and you can find them in the description below. We've also changed a couple of things about how we do What's the Meta with the system that we use, so if there's anything you want to say about that and how to improve it, do let us know in the comments below, and if there's anything that you agree or disagree on as well in this video, then do let us know in the comments below. I would be really interested to hear that out. We just want to quickly say as well that these don't include the changes that are on the PTR currently. We will acknowledge them in this video with the Bastion rework and stuff like that, but we're not letting this affect our view of Bastion, Mercy, Roadhog and Winston, so just a heads up. But let's get started with today's video.
So we usually end the video talking about the current meta, but we wanted to change things up a bit for this episode at least. The last time we did a What's the Meta was the 6th of December last year, and we just wanted to highlight what happened there and what's sort of going on right now, in these sort of broad strokes. Anyway, D.Va was dominating, Soldier was dominating, Beyblade had fallen, but basically everything just felt a bit stale with a triple tank meta. It was a very set and tank heavy meta with very little alternative. Now with these recent changes, more options are available. Triple tank is still a frequent pick for highly ranked players, but dive, triple DPS and the balanced 2-2-2 are all being picked a lot more. The meta is overall just less stale and the hero pool wider, and more combinations and compositions can be put together basically. We know Blizzard are working on other buffs and reworks currently, but the game is in a much healthier position than during the Christmas period. Also please note that we've changed a few things about the ranking system for the What's the Meta videos. We had up and down arrows in old videos, but there really wasn't a good gauge of what this exactly meant, so instead we got a sort of traffic light system of green, which are strong picks the majority of the time, yellow, which are situational but can work out sometimes, and red, heroes that are probably best avoiding at the moment. We also have our S tier, which is gold, and these are the super strong picks. They might be a bit meta defining, but at least they're just very strong overall, have high win rates, high pick rates, and are really solid core heroes. But with that out of the way, let's get started. Oh, and also just real quick, I want to mention those Roadhog changes very briefly. We did a video recently comparing the hook on the live version, the hook known as Hook 2.0, and the hook on the PTR version, and the results have been somewhat sketchy. Playing Roadhog in PTR quick play has been fairly consistent overall though, so it's really hard to gauge whether these changes will inhibit Roadhog's pick rate or not. Winston isn't affected nearly as much, with his head shrunk a little bit, but it's a step in the right direction on buffing our scientist.
So to begin with, let's go over the tanks, and overall it seems to be in a much healthier situation. Don't get me wrong, triple tank still exists and is still useful, but players overall are more inclined to pick a much bigger hero pool of all sorts of stuff that doesn't include triple tank. Going alphabetically, we start with D.Va, who has fallen a lot since her nerfs. She's still somewhat useful, but she's red tier for us as other tanks are much more favoured and generally in a much stronger position than D.Va right now. Reinhardt is just Reinhardt, the same as he's always been, although with Winston being picked a little bit more, the main tank slot now is more interchangeable between the two. But if in doubt, always go Rein. Now, okay, we need to stop for a second to talk about Roadhog, as in the pro scene he has fallen in popularity, but in ranked he's an absolute god pick in the right hands. It's definitely interesting how this has come about, and it has to do with the new hook. 2.0 can absolutely punish bad positioning by a team compared to the old hook. And with it not being as problematic with catching people around walls, pros can't really make as much use out of 2.0 as they did with 1.0. It's also easy to play around in the pro scene. You can bait the hook, once it's on cooldown you engage. In ranked play, it's great to pick off targets that are stood where they shouldn't be and to confirm those kills as well, which can often be a difficult thing to do in ranked. But with how coordinated competitive play is, it just doesn't have the same effect there. Winston, as we pointed out before, is in a fairly healthy spot. He could be used in dive compositions, and if there are teams that don't run a Lucio, he can absolutely burn through them as well. And finally Zarya, who has basically taken D.Va's spot in a triple tank lineup, but can also be used in dive and 2-2-2. If you're not comfortable on Roadhog, then Zarya is our choice off tank.
Onto DPS, and we have some pretty good standings across each hero. Genji relishes the dive comp and can be a flare DPS in a 2-2-2 setup. The exact same can be said with Pharah and Tracer, who now have a little bit more freedom to be picked and to make an impression in their games. McCree is in an okay spot himself. He's certainly not a horrible pick, but just not as reliable or strong as Soldier 76 right now. The only time I would really recommend picking the Cowboy is maybe alongside a Soldier even for the double hit scan, or if you're proficient at dealing with tracers. Since that old ultimate nerf for McCree of cancelling his ultimate not giving him 50% charge remaining, he's just not the same hero that he sort of used to be, or at least not in the same spot. Reaper is probably the only flare DPS to be not considered as a strong pick right now at least. Tracer and Genji's mobility and ability to shorten the distance is preferred to Reaper's super sneaky setup, or well, maybe not so sneaky even. Now that Roadhog can reliably one-shot Reapers after a hook, it certainly is a lot harder to play the Edgelord. Still a good choice in the right hands though, but just not as good of a DPS as the others. Soldier is still great and definitely in a sort of god tier in our opinion. He's still a choice pick for the DPS in a triple tank setup and definitely favored in a 2-2-2 setup. He can be used for dive in certain situations to put pressure from a long distance, but overall with his synergy alongside his team, he's still a great choice and most likely our choice pick for DPS. Sombra is creeping into a legitimate use now, much like the other yellow choices we have here, but other choices are most of the time preferred. It just feels like some players are actually properly starting to grasp Sombra, at least in the pro scene, but also in very high rank play. She's a long way from being a solid pick amongst all of our games, but it's a start at least. And as we said earlier, Tracer is in a solid spot right now, can do a lot of work again, works super well in the right hands. D.Va disappearing out of the meta just helps a lot.
Let's talk about supports and let's talk about Ana. Probably the hardest hero to gauge for some time and probably one of the reasons why it's taken us so long to bring out this forecast. We expected some serious fall off from Ana in the early days of the changes, but we've been somewhat surprised with how rooted she is in the competitive scene. She has her weaknesses now and she isn't a complete S tier must play all of the time hero, but she is still heavily preferred over other options. In fact, we've seen Lucia swapped out more in place of Zen, Mercy, Symmetra than Ana has been replaced. As we quickly glossed over, Lucia is still an S tier pick but can be swapped out for others on occasion, but again, much preferred addition to a lineup, especially if the enemy have one as well. Mercy, I would say, is the bottom choice of the supports right now, but we have seen some recent changes come in on the PTR, and once they go to live, we'll play with them a little bit and let you know what we think, but currently she's not in a great spot in comparison to the others. She can be a top choice for top teams, and we have seen Mercy only players reach the ranks of top 500, but it's such a big risk in comparison to other choices. Especially if you need to defend an objective to not lose and you die instantly, it's just there's nothing down, there's nothing there, and you can lose the point almost instantly. There's just more reasons not to play her than to play her currently. Symmetra, she's pretty good again, a solid pick on some capture point maps, some hybrid and some payloads depending on the teams and coordination, stuff like that. She has so much more to offer than before, and overall she's in a nice niche position and definitely worth picking up from time to time in your ranked adventures. She's not really used by the pros, but again she can be utilised in a less professional way. And last for the supports is Zenyatta. He's used more, that's for certain, with some dive compositions and on maps like Control, but is struggling to get in front of Ana a lot of the time. Again, he has his uses, but other options are preferred in this case.
Last up are the defense heroes, and the ratings here sort of come from ranked play as opposed to pro play, as these defense heroes are almost never picked in professional matches. And now to Bastion, a hero that has very recently received a big rework. Overall, Blizzard are looking at this as a buff to the hero. People are still experimenting with it and finding out exactly what you can do with it, but it should up Bastion's survivability at least a little bit. But with Bastion's improved durability and how good he is in recon mode compared to before, we may see Bastion a heck of a lot more in the future, but currently on live, he's trashed here. Hanzo can actually be used as DPS to get quick pickoffs and to synergize his ult amongst others. The Sonar Arrow and the Scatter one are useful abilities to have at a team's disposal so long as the player is effective with them. A Zarya Dragon Strike combo never goes wrong either. Junkrat can spam chokes but can easily be played around, and we just wouldn't recommend picking him up a lot of the time. He's just a bit too inconsistent. Mei has gone down in use overall but can still be effective with stalling out points, and on certain maps if you're trying to hold a first objective. Torbjorn as well is finding use in interesting circumstances. The Symmetra Torbjorn hold has gone up in popularity and can be a very useful thing to include for your team, at least a bit now and again. Just similar to the Mercy point we made earlier, it's a big risk for sometimes little reward. Sometimes it's just best to go for the consistent results rather than the big gamble, right? Anyway, finally, Widowmaker. In a very good spot actually, and can actually be used in a lot of strong situations, but again, it needs to be in the right hands, and it needs to be against a team that aren't just expecting nor countering your playstyle. Once that one trick has ran out of juice, you best change.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. Our sort of conclusion is that the game is feeling a lot healthier, more heroes are being chosen and more compositions are being able to be made use of, and we are still seeing some changes trickle in now and again, so overall we're in a pretty good spot right now, and I think we can sort of stay like this until season 4. Do let us know in the comments what you think, whether we've got this sort of report pretty much right. But also do let us know what you think about Mercy and Bastion, how they're going to be picked with these new changes on the PTR. If there are some major changes there, then we may do another one in a couple of weeks, and we think there are going to be a couple more changes coming through as well. And until next time, take care, we'll see you then.